Now whilst the wings are curing, the leading edge and tips, what I can now look at is my elevator, and my tailplane, and start to think about getting these ready because they've got to stick to the fuselage at some point in time, so I might as well look at them now. First thing I'm going to do is draw the centre line onto the tailplane. Good old imperial, that's inches, 20 inches. So 10 inches is halfway. Let's just move the elevators out of the way. So that's from the centre there to there. 10 inches. Use my square and just draw the centre line. Always good to have a reference point. Now we've got our two elevators. Keep the scrap. And they're going to go on like that. And like that. With the gap there, because that's where the fuse goes. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do whilst it's in this state is I'm just going to sand the shape, the profile of the leading edge for the tailplane. There is no point in trying to make that sheet of balsa into an aerofoil section tapering down. There is no point. This isn't an aerobatic model, this is a semi-scale model. So what we're going to do, in fact I'm just looking at that, make sure it's straight, yeah. So all I'm going to do is just round that edge. And similarly with the trailing edge here, the plan shows it tapering down to a point there. Really, there's not that much need to do that. If you just left them like that or just rounded those off, that's absolutely fine. Yes, you could give it some form of shape if you wanted to, just to make it look aesthetically more pleasing. But aerodynamically, for what we're talking about here, there is no need to do it. In fact, you don't want to make it into a sharp point, definitely not. It's shown on the drawing as a sharp point. The golden rule I was always taught years ago on controlled surfaces was sharp point for speed, blunt point for aerobatics. In other words, if you keep the end or edge square, if you keep that square, you've got better response to the control surfaces. If you taper it to a point, you've got less response to the control surfaces, but there's less drag, so it'll go quicker. We're not talking about a speed merchant plane here. So let's just sand this to a bit of a profile. And I'm just sanding not just the top surface, the front and the underside like that. So I'm putting in a bit of a shape to it. Reverse it, do the same again. You get the hang of it, you get the idea of what I'm doing. And what I can do to finish that off is just use my sandpaper like that, and just I folded that over, so that's going to give me a curved edge to that. When I'm doing the main plane, the main wing, I will not just settle for that for the leading edge. I'm going to do some more work on the leading edge of that. Anyway, I'm just going to continue doing the tip edges here, and I'll also do the same with the elevators as well. I'll do that off camera. But I did cheat. What I made a few years ago, 3 years ago, when I first got a 3D printing machine, was I made some profile sanders. As you can see, they're just little blocks with different cutouts in them with sandpaper in. And I've got different sizes here. I've got different sizes for different leading edges of main planes, leading edge of tailplanes and so on. And what that does is very quickly, it took me about 3 minutes, just literally go up and down like that, up and down like that, backwards and forwards, and slightly rock around, and you'll see there that what you've got is now a decent profile on there. Saves me so much time. So yes, I did cheat, and what that also does is it gives me an exact profile all the way around because it's being sanded to that. So I will do the same with the elevators, just working my way round, and you can see how quickly that forms that nice rounded edge to the balsa. There, I left the burn on the, you can see there the curve round there where it's formed that, and that's nicely formed round there. As I say, it's, you won't necessarily have one of those or those. They're just things I've made to help me. So now when that goes up against my tailplane, I've got the same profile following. It's difficult to show you on here. Let's get my hand there so it gets focus. So you can see that profile following from the tailplane round to the elevator. And I'll do the same with this edge here as well. Now, I said earlier about the trailing edges don't need to be a sharp point, but if you wanted to put a slight chamfer to give a more of a tapered bit to the trailing edge of the elevators, then yeah, by all means do that. If you're going to do that, things I would suggest is you mark a line somewhere down there so you know where you're going to sand back to, and also mark a center line down there. In fact, with that it may be easier to slightly take off the burning of the laser cutter there. You can see now there's my line. So I know when I start to sand I'm going to do it equally. So I'm just going to put mine on my cutting block, and I'm going to use a permagrit tool. Could be my sandpaper, but I'll use this. And just work my way along. Keeping an eye on that pencil line, or the pencil lines I should say, so I'm coming down towards that pencil line there. Need to maybe increase it a bit there, flatten it out a bit, do the same on the reverse side. A little bit more on there to balance it. And there, You can see there that I've got that curved shape, and then I'm going to use my little sanding tool again and just going to give it a little bit of a rounding the edges there. I haven't done the end of this one, so I'm just going to give it the same as the other one. Yeah, and hopefully you can see that, a nice curved shape. I may actually put these up for sale, so that some of these, they're quite a handy tool to have, maybe a set of 3 for a £5, something like that. So that's one. Just check the other one. That's fine. Make sure they are there or thereabouts, which they are. That's good. So the only thing left to do on these is to form the chamfer that needs to be in place here, 45-degree chamfer, so that when these are attached to the tailplane, they can pivot up and down with the hinges. I'm not going to do anything to this, the trailing edge of the elevator, other than getting rid of that, the burn marks. That's all. I'm not going to do any more to that. I'm not going to chamfer anything on that. There's not going to be anything towards the hinges on that. It's all going to be carried out on these. And once again, get rid of that bit of that burn mark. I'll grab the nearest pen. It's a fine liner which I use for panel lines, but that'll be alright. So let's just go back to here again. Let's mark the middle, the centre line there. Mark the top. And the bottom. You can see there I've got the line going down there, and I've got a centre line going down there, so I know what to sand to. I'm going to use my sanding bar, holding it at a 45-degree angle. Doesn't have to be 45 degrees. Yeah, that's pretty good. So that one's now done. You can see that angle on there, and when that's hinged on my tailplane, that's going to give plenty of movement, plenty. So that's absolutely fine. Do the same with this one. Yep, spot on there. You can see the chamfer is coming to my line that I drew in the centre, which is fine. They're done, which is great.